We are in a very interesting time. Nothing is clear, nothing is stable. It seems everything is about to crash in front of our eyes, but yet nothing happens. And then we hear from everybody all the conspiracies and all the opinions. Russia is going to change the economy, and Ukraine and the... So we hear a lot of fake news, but the reality is that nothing is really stable to a point that one can say, I foresee in the next year, in the next 2 years. The reality is there is no stability in the world right now. Nothing is really clear. Definitely some type of a mess going on. And some people don't really care. Some people just do their thing, live their life, and business as usual, and whatever Hashem wants to happen, it will happen, whether I stress over it or not. But that's the minority. The majority, in times of instability, are looking what they can lean on. Some people are on the verge of a nervous breakdown. The majority of people who contact me, they contact me to find some words of comfort, like as if I have some magic words to comfort people. But most people are very scared, they don't know what's going to happen, they hear too many things. That's the problem when you look at all these channels all day long, because you hear so many things that really 95% of it is nothing connected to the truth and will never happen. The crashing of the Bitcoin and crashing of this, and at the end everything will crash, but if you would know when, things would look different. But the reality is that people constantly look for stability, words or something that they can lean on to have some comfort and feel something that is safe. And for that, there's only one way, and that's called bitachon, that you have security in Hashem. There's no security in anything. You can't have security in the government, not in any type of agency, not in... nothing can really give you security. The only thing that can really give you security is Hashem. We call it bitachon, that I have security in Hashem. That doesn't matter what's going to happen, Hashem is in control. So, how do you activate the midah, the attribute of bitachon, of having security? That's not so simple. Very few people are walking with full security in Hashem. Nothing phases them, no worries, no anxieties. Let the world collapse. Anyways, Hashem is running the show. Like I told you last class, I fall asleep very fast. Nothing worries me. I put everything in the hands of Hashem, not in governments, not in banks, not in any other psychopath. So how do you apply midat bitachon? How do you find some peace of quiet in the craziness of the world? Now, interestingly here, is that the bitachon, this attribute of security, is custom built. You're born with it. It's not something that you need to work for and acquire. You just need to know how to apply it, or how to really dig deep down into your soul to bring it up to the surface. But you're born with it. So today we're going to discuss not a simple thing, because very few people, like I told you, have midat bitachon. And by the way, I'm talking now about the instability of the world. Sometimes it comes to your livelihood, to your parnasah. And in many times it comes to you finding your other half, or in any project that you do, in any encounter that you have. Many people, they don't have bitachon, they don't have the security in Hashem that things will work out how they're supposed to work out. So David HaMelech says something very, very interesting in the book of Tehillim, chapter Heart, chapter Lamed Bet, verse Yud, verse 10. Haboteach be'Hashem, chesed yisoveveu. Yisoveveu, yisovevenu, right? Sovevenu. Sorry. Translation, who trusts in the Lord, kindness will encompass him. So if I have a bitachon in the Master of the universe, then chesed, kindness, the kindness of Hashem, will surround me. Saying in other words, that Hashem is saying to us through King David, that if you trust me, that will cause me not to disappoint you. Right? That's what the king says. The king of the world says through the mouth of the king, King David. Right? That's basically what the verse means. If you trust me, then I'll make sure that you're not disappointed. You have a guarantee from the Master of the universe. Now, on the other hand, one might say, you know what? It's pretty easy to apply this bitachon. I'll trust in Hashem and everything will fall in place. But then there's a little problem, is that the second that you apply that, the second that you say that, comes up a question in your mind. Why should everything be fine? Why should it work out exactly how I want? Who gives me the guarantee? This little voice in your head tells you that. If you remember 3 years ago when the whole corona started, then many spiritual leaders, fake or not fake, it's irrelevant at this point, came out with a very calming message. Don't worry, everything will be okay. Remember those messages? Everything will be fine. So I didn't like that message at the time, and I said, don't listen to these people. Nothing is going to be fine. Right? You got to get your act together. This is a sign from Hashem that worry and nothing will be fine. And hopefully, instead of you losing your focus, your worry should lead you to actions. I need to prepare myself for the coming storm. If some ignorant individual tells me, don't worry, everything will be fine, I don't buy that. I worry and nothing will be fine, because if I don't worry, then I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to sit and wait for something to happen. Now, 90 years ago, there were people in Europe that told the Jews, don't worry, everything will be fine. And when they were pushed into trains, don't worry, everything will be fine. Just comply with the orders. Okay? And like that, you can give many examples that don't worry, everything will be fine. That's false hope and false information. And that's why I strongly said 3 years ago, worry, this is not a passing thing, and it won't be fine. That's Hashem telling us, I'm going to come down to this world and create havoc. I need you to trust me. But it's not going to come so simple. We're just now reading in the Parashot about the exile, but leaving Egypt. Moshe came to Mitzrayim and told the Jews, don't worry, everything will be fine. No, he didn't. He didn't tell them it's going to be fine. He told them, get ready. Yeah, we're going out of Egypt, but it's not going to be fine. So, the problem is, to make one thing clear, and again, not that I'm telling you start worrying and being stressed out, but when you worry in a healthy way, it causes you to take action, to prepare yourself the right way to whatever situation that might come. And it's not that it's my approach. I learned that from my father, Yitzchak, from my father, Yaakov. When Yaakov went out of Haran, he found out through his intelligence systems that he had some spies, right? That Esav is coming towards him to kill him with 400 men. Can you imagine if some spiritual leader would tell Yaakov, don't worry, everything will be fine. And you know why everything will be fine? Because God promised you that you'll be fine, right? Yaakov Avinu even says, no, I'm not taking that as a promise. Maybe I did a sin on the way, and it's not going to be fine. And Yaakov prepares for war. And at the same time, he also prays, and at the same time, he prepares present, but he prepares. So when things come up, and you gather some moment of courage, and you're saying, I'm going to have bitachon in Hashem, that Hashem is with me, but then this little voice comes and tells you, where do you have this guarantee? I mean, there were many times in the past that people trusted Hashem and things didn't work out well. So I can tell you again that I, Alon, I'm the master in bitachon. I have bitachon from here till tomorrow. Because I believe in Hashem and I know Hashem does what He needs to do. But on the other hand, I'm also the champion in telling it's not going to be okay. Okay? So in one way, I have full bitachon in Hashem. I preach that. I tell people you have to have bitachon. But I'm also, on the other hand, tell people don't be gullible. It's not going to be okay. It's going to be bad. Prepare yourself. And I rather say that and be mistaken than to say, don't worry, everything will be fine, and be mistaken. So I tell people, because I see things as they are, it's not going to be fine. The redemption is not coming with nice background music and some imaginary individual that will waltz us out of this exile. It's going to come with a lot of problems. More than we ever saw as the human race. Now it's just the preparation. It's Hashem giving us a lot of opportunities to do tshuva, to get my act together, to connect myself to Hashem, but don't think for 1 second it's coming nice. I will be very happy to be wrong and that the redemption will come nice. My personal opinion, it's going to come with great disasters. But the ones who trust Hashem 100% will not even notice what's going on from left and right, because they're in Goshen. Bnei Israel, when they were now in Mitzrayim, what we're reading now in the Parashot, they were sitting in Goshen. They didn't feel the plagues. They didn't suffer from the plagues because they were connected to Hashem. So the ones who are connected to Hashem, as David HaMelech says, Zabotech b'Hashem, Chesed yisov mimenu. You're trusting in Hashem. You have security in Hashem. Kindness will surround. You're not going to notice. The economy will collapse. You'll have money. Missiles are going to be flying over your head. You don't even hear them. Or whatever Hashem will decide to strike. So, what is the idea, the philosophy behind the concept of bitachon? That's what we're going to talk about today. Because on one way, like I told you, and I'm saying it not in an arrogant way, I will take the first step in saying, I have bitachon in Hashem, everything is going to happen exactly how it should. Doesn't matter, good, bad. I trust Hashem 100%. I told you, I fall asleep within a fraction of a second. Takes me maybe a third of a second, and I'm out. No worries, nothing bothers me. But on the other hand, like I told you, I'm the first who will tell you, don't believe the false hopes. It's not going to be okay. Don't trust anyone but your guts, but yourself, but Hashem. Prepare for the worst. So we're going to have to now talk and clarify the entire philosophy of bitachon. How do I live a life of bitachon? With my parnasah. Most people, they don't have bitachon in their parnasah. How are they going to make money? How are they going to pay the rent? How are they going to have what to pay the next day? Most people don't have bitachon when it comes to finding their other half, raising their kids, etc. I'm not talking about now in world matters. So let me tell you quickly a story, and that would set the tone for the class, that there was once a man, a Jewish man, who was a shochet, a professional, how do you call, slaughterer? How do you say it even in English? I don't know, a butcher? Yeah, thank you. A professional shochet, that was his job. He would slaughter animals for his parnasah. I don't know if you're aware, the ones who slaughter the animals, the butchers, not the ones who are in the meat store, they're in the middle of nowhere. I mean, I have a friend, his father is a shochet in South America, comes home every half a year. And they're in all sorts of faraway places where the cattle is. Okay, this poor man, the father dies, and he comes to the home, to the shiva, to the burial. Now he's obligated, according to halacha, to say Kaddish, right? To say a certain prayer once, 3 times a day, after praying in a congregation of 10 men. It's called Kaddish, and he has to say that for 11 months. Now he's in a big dilemma. What do I do? do I leave my steady job where I supply parnasa, livelihood, to my entire family, and since it's a true story, by the way, it's not that I'm making up a story. Not only that, he was the only one who was really making good earning, so he agreed to cover all the burial expenses of the father. The other two brothers didn't have money, so he says, what am I going to do? Leave my steady job to come back to the city so I can say Kaddish 3 times a day and pray in a minyan, in a congregation, or not? What do I do here? So he sends a letter to his, letter or phone call, whatever it was, to his rabbi, who the rabbi tells him, listen, according to halacha, if you're asking the halacha here, your job is more important than saying Kaddish. That's the halacha. You have to, sheshet yamim ta'avod, v'asita kol menachtecha. 6 days a week, you have to work, do your job, and earn money. The Kaddish the brothers can say. You're 3 boys. So 2 brothers will say the Kaddish, and you work. And if there was a situation that there wouldn't even be brothers, you pay somebody. If you're asking the halacha part, many times you go to a rabbi, you ask, what's the halacha? The rabbi will tell you, the halacha is this, but beyond the halacha is that. That was the situation here. The rabbi told him, according to halacha, you have to keep your job. You have to continue working in a steady job. Let the brothers say Kaddish. But if you want an answer that is not based on halacha, all depends how much you trust Hashem. If you have full bitachon in Hashem, then you're going to leave your steady job, go back to the city so you can pray 3 times a day in a minyan and say Kaddish. And if you have bitachon, Hashem will find you another job. Right? The question is, how much bitachon do you have? Now that's not such a clear answer, because the rabbi just told him, if you have bitachon, then Hashem will find you another job. Saying in other words, if you don't really have security and trust and bitachon in Hashem, it won't work. And you're not going to find another job. Stay in your steady job. So the rabbi took the approach of David HaMelech. Haboteach be'Hashem chesed yisovevenu. The one who trusts the Lord, then kindness will compass him. If you trust Hashem, then Hashem will pull through. Very interesting answer. Because basically saying, in other words, there are 2 paths to live your life. Right? One path, and by the way, the 2 paths is called choice. The first path is that you choose to follow the rules of nature. Right? It's called bederech hateva. I follow what the nature says. The rules, simple rules. But the other path, which is a choice too, is to have strong belief. That's above the nature. That is called bitachon. That's the definition of bitachon. That I have strong belief and I live above nature. I don't segregate myself or limit myself to the rules of nature. I go with God. As Morpheus told Neo when he was trying to teach him to fly, you have to let it all go. Fear, doubt, and disbelief. Free your mind. Then you'll fly, right? But that's how you live above nature. And if you live above nature, then you're not bound to the laws of nature. Because you are bound to the laws of God. Your choice. You choose. Therefore, David HaMelech says, Haboteach be'Hashem. If you put all your trust in God, chesed yisovevenu. Kindness will compass you. You attract, so to say, the kindness of Hashem. This is a perfect tool to overcome all your problems. I will just put all my trust in Hashem. Hashem will come through. But like I told you, it's easier said than done. Easily can be done, but then you have that little voice that puts that little doubt. What if it's not going to work? What if I'm going to, let's say, take the example of the butcher. What if I do leave my job and I don't find another job? Then I came out, in Hebrew we say, bald from both sides. Hashem made it in such of a way that if you put all your hope in Him, then He will change everything for you. That's the system how Hashem made. But it has to be 100%, not 99%. There's a verse in the Torah that Rabbeinu Yonah actually takes from that verse that it's a negative mitzvah. Mamash mitzvat lo toaseh. This verse can be found in the book of Devarim, chapter 20, verse 1. The verse starts with Ki titze lemilchama al oivecha v'ra'ita susim v'rechev, that you go out to war, and when you go out to war, you see the enemy coming to you with a lot of horses, with a lot of chariots, and you, wait a minute, there are a lot of people. We're a very small army. What's going to happen now? And the verse continues and says, Lo tifchad. Don't worry. What do you mean, don't worry? Don't be afraid. We're a platoon of men, and I see here 2 brigades. Rabbeinu Yonah learns from this pasuk, Ki titze lemilchama, when you go to war and you see horses and chariots and many men, you shall not be afraid of them. How? How can you control your fear? You know that fear is an emotion that you can't really control. The fear just comes up. I mean, you can maybe later on try to work around it, but it's an emotion that just comes up. How does the Torah command you, don't be afraid? You shall not be afraid of them. And Rabbeinu Yonah says, that's a mitzvah lo ta'aseh. It's an actual mitzvah from the Torah. How? How can you control your fear? So, like David HaMelech says, and I'll repeat it for the 17th time, Tehillim, chapter 32, verse 10, Haboteach be'Hashem chesed yisovevenu. The mitzvah and the remedy for having trust in Hashem is the only tool for the success that everything should be successful. As the famous Hasidic saying says, think good and it will be good. Right? You heard that saying already. Some people think the Baal Shem Tov said it. It's not the Baal Shem Tov. It's the third Chabad Rebbe in the Lubavitch dynasty who said that. The Tzemach Tzedek. It's, for some reason people think or say or talk that the Baal Shem Tov said that. Maybe the Tzemach Tzedek heard it from word of mouth from the Baal Shem Tov. But the famous saying is from the Tzemach Tzedek, and again, the story was very briefly to tell you the story about a man. His son was very, very sick. Took him to many different doctors. Nobody had hope. And when the son was about to die, he traveled to Lubavitch to see the third Rebbe in the Lubavitch dynasty, the Tzemach Tzedek. His name is also Menachem Mendel. And he just told him, think good and it will be good. That's it. And that was already taken for many, many generations. So, think good, it will be good. It's a very nice sticker to put on your bumper and a very nice approach. Think good, it will be good. But when it comes to the actual point that you need to think good, to actualize it, then comes the doubt. Who says it's going to be good? And again, this doubt is a very, what would be the right word? It's right. I don't have the right word now, but it's right. Because Yaakov Avinu was afraid. Yaakov is called Habchir Sheba'avot, the greatest, the selected, the best of all 3 fathers. He was a prophet. He was still afraid, even though God promised him, don't worry, I will protect you. You will come out of Haran and I will protect you. He had a promise. Nevertheless, he was still afraid. And you know what he said? Maybe I did a sin and the sin is going to cause me to be punished. Yaakov Avinu was afraid when Esav was coming forward. So Yaakov Avinu had that doubt. Who said it's going to be okay? So, we are in Parashat Beshalach. I forgot to mention that, in case you forgot. So the 2 main themes in this parasha The first part of the parasha is the splitting of the sea, right? And the singing of the Shirat Hayam, which is a very epic event. But the next part of the parasha is the beginning of the wandering in the desert and the whole encounter of the giving of the man. So from this point on, for 40 years, they have no worries about their livelihood. They don't work, no jobs. And somehow, they get food delivered to their tent for 40 years. Now, seemingly, this is a great miracle. Many hold by that the man was one of the great miracles that happened in the desert. 40 years, just delivered to you, UPS, straight to your tent. But the reality, and I'm going to drop a bombshell right now to many, the man, not only that it wasn't a miracle, it was actually a punishment. The man was a difficulty, suffering, challenge. Yeah. And I know now many will be like pausing the video, I can't listen to this guy. So before you pause the video, wait another 30 seconds. The man was not a miracle. Ask almost any commentary or any learned rabbi, they'll tell you, yeah, the man was a miracle. Food coming from the sky? Straight to your tent? If it's not a miracle, then what is it? Then Moshe Rabbeinu himself and God himself say in the Torah in two places that it's not a miracle, it's a punishment. So really the concept of the man was a difficulty, suffering, a challenge to see if they're going to stick with God or not. If Hashem would want to do a miracle, you know what he would do? The weed would just grow from the ground in the desert by itself, right? That would be a miracle. That they would go out, find the wheat, grown from the ground, and harvest it and make bread. That would be a miracle. The man was a test from Hashem. In the book of Shmot, chapter 16, verse 4, it says as follows, Hineni mamtir lachem lechem min hashamayim. I am going to rain down bread. Go out and gather it. That's what it says in the parasha. Then it adds a word, lema'an. What's this lema'an? Lema'an annasenu. For that I will test them. That's what the Torah says, not me. So Hashem says, I'm going to rain man on you to test you. Anasenu hayilech betoratim lo. I will test you whether or not they will follow my teachings. So Hashem is telling you straight out that the man is a test. It's not a miracle. And for thousands of years, you were taught that the man was a miracle. 2 minutes to look at the text, you figure it out by yourself. The text says that. Hashem says, I will rain down the man on you to test you, to see if you go with me or without me. Psh. Now I told you that there are two places in the Torah. Let's fast forward to Parashat Ekev, Book of Devarim, chapter 8, verse 2. Moshe Rabbeinu is rebuking the nation of Israel, and he says, "V'zacharta et kol haderech ze 40 shana." You shall remember the way 40 years. Why should you remember the days for 40 years? Let's see what the Torah says, what Moshe Rabbeinu says. In order to afflict you, to test you, to know what is in your heart. Moshe Rabbeinu tells the nation, for 40 years you were given man to afflict you, to test you, and to know what's in your heart. Can you now title the man as a miracle? No. Whether you would keep the mitzvot or not. So the man is a test. So we're reading now in this week's parasha the symbol of trust in Hashem, and now we're learning that it wasn't even trust. It's to test. It's a punishment. It's a challenge. It's not even a miracle. And like I told you, the miracle would be that the wheat would just grow from the ground. That would be a nice miracle. In the desert with no water. Moshe Rabbeinu continues and he says, and he afflicted you and let you go hungry. We think that the man would bring them to a place of satisfaction. It didn't. Can you imagine eating a meal and you're leaving the meal and you're still hungry? And I'm not making this up. Moshe Rabbeinu says, and he afflicted you and left you hungry and let you go hungry. So they were hungry for 40 years. Opening the fridge, full of food, you eat, I'm still hungry. Then fed you with man. Saying, in other words, Moshe Rabbeinu is saying, the man didn't bring them a place to satisfaction. They were constantly hungry. That's why later on you see in the Torah, they were complaining. We want to go back to Mitzrayim. We had zucchinis, we had fish, we want watermelons, we want meat. What do you think? They were complaining because they were spoiled? They were like, what is this man? Maybe they were Jamaicans. What is this man? You know, that came to me as a shock because for many years I thought the man was a miracle. It wasn't. You know, when I found out that the man is not a miracle, how do we know that we have to fast on Yom Kippur? I have a question for you, right? Most important day on the Jewish calendar. We have to fast. Everybody knows that. Where does it say we have to fast? Quick challenge. Tell me. Where? Where does it say that I have to fast on Yom Kippur? It doesn't. You know, don't try to find an answer. There isn't anywhere that it says that I have to fast on Yom Kippur. So why do we fast? The commandment that the Torah tells me can be found in the book of Vayikra, chapter 23, verse 32. Ve'initem nafshotechem. That's the commandment. And you shall afflict yourself on the 9th of the month. It doesn't say to starve yourself or to fast. It says to afflict yourself. Well, I want to bang my head at the wall. I think that's a pretty good affliction. No, the 9th of the 10th month, of the 7th month. I didn't read the whole verse. Go to the book of Vayikra, chapter 23, verse 32. Read the verse. Okay? The translation. And you shall afflict yourself on the 9th day of the 7th month. Just read the pasuk. So we know when Yom Kippur is, but it doesn't say that I have to fast. Where do I learn that I have to fast? Initem et nafshotechem, afflict yourself. You know what? I'm going to walk barefoot for the whole day. That's an affliction. The floor is dirty and hot. And where do we learn that we have to fast? Comes the Gemara, and the Gemara says, oh, you know what's inui? You know what's afflicting? Hunger. Where do you learn that from? From Parashat Ekev, from Moshe Rabbeinu. This is called Gzera Shava. For Moshe Rabbeinu says, what did Moshe Rabbeinu? And he afflicted you. And let you go hungry. So the affliction is hunger. The inui is fasting. That you're going to be hungry. That's where the Talmud learns Gzera Shava. You have a pasuk. You have another pasuk. That's it. That's where we learn that we're fasting on Yom Kippur. So what are we concluding here? That the man had one attribute. An attribute that made their life hard. The man was not signifying bitachon in Hashem, that they had trust in Hashem and they would just trust that the next day man will be. They actually went to sleep hungry and worried. What's going to be tomorrow? And you know how we know that they were worried? Because the Torah came and told them, don't even think about taking 2 portions and think it's going to last for the next day. And if you do that, it's going to rot. So that the Torah is already taking 2 steps forward and telling them, you can't save man, you can't store it, you can't freeze it, you can't put it in Ziplocs, it's not going to work. You're getting enough for 1 feeding. That's it. And if chas v'shalom somebody would take extra, then it would rot. So the man didn't have the attribute of bitachon. That's not the symbol of bitachon, of trusting Hashem. And the bitachon that, let's say, applies to the generation of the desert and can apply to us is, first of all, financial security. Everybody wants some financial security. But also, in English it doesn't translate the same, but in English, sheket nafshi is called like a peace of mind. Sometimes my security, I just want to have a peace of mind. Stability. What causes people to be completely not focused is when they don't have financial stability, when they don't have security, they don't have a peace of mind, then they worry. So all this has nothing to do with the man. The man didn't give them any security. Lehefech. On the contrary, the man caused them to worry. What if tomorrow the man is not going to come? I had enough, I cleaned my plate. What if tomorrow there's no man? So not only that it didn't give them bitachon, it gave them worry. And why? Because the man was given every day for that day. Once they clean their plates, now starts the worry. What am I going to eat tomorrow? Who said it's going to work tomorrow? We don't have a guarantee. Saying in other words that the man caused them a torture, an affliction, because they didn't know what's going to be tomorrow. Even though it went like this for years, but they still had the worry. And that worry was being dependent on Hashem. That's a worry. They didn't have any independence. If you have independence, you're not worried. It causes them to depend on Hashem in a very insecure way and in a very unhealthy way. So Moshe Rabbeinu says it was an affliction, minui. No price. You didn't get any price here. And definitely not a miracle. The man gave them food, but not security and stability. So for 40 years, they're walking in the desert. They don't know what's going to happen the next day. Now we'll ask a big question. Why? But Hashem is coming to torture the nation. 40 years I'm going to torture you in the desert. Hashem doesn't do nothing with no cause, with no reason. The man was an academy for bitachon. How do you acquire bitachon and trust in Hashem? 40 years they went through an academy. Saying in other words, whoever worries or worried till today will continue to always worry. And Hashem says, the same way that I took care of you for 40 years, I will take care of you for always. Hashem is telling you, if you were worrying till now, you'll continue worrying. If you see that I took care of you, for the last 20, 30, 40 years, I will continue taking care of you. Why do you need to worry? Every day we say a prayer. I hope you say it every day. It's called Birkat Hamazon. That's when you eat and you say the certain prayer, like a grace, but it's Birkat Hamazon. Okay, so it takes 7 minutes. 8 minutes, 12 minutes to the slow readers. It's the only prayer that we have from the Torah. Most people don't say that. They say it maybe once a week on Shabbat. Most people will drive 40 kilometers to the pizza shop that serves you mezonot pizza, only not to say Birkat Hamazon on the pizza around the corner. You're laughing, but that's the reality. Everybody's trying to avoid this prayer. Stupidity. The most powerful prayer that we have solves all your problems. You're obligated to say it once a day. Question yourself if you do that. Don't tell me you're allergic to gluten. So do sourdough. In that prayer, we say a very clear verse. Hazan umefarnes lakol. That feeds everybody. Hashem takes care of billions of birds, trillions of fish, billions of ants. Everybody has food. Cats. Did you see the cats here in this? You know what? They eat better than me. The cats here in Tzfat. Oh, fat. You come with the garbage, they're like, what did you bring today? Oh no, your neighbor brought something better. Sitting there on the garbage bins with a toothpick. Shem takes care of everybody. The man was not meant to give bread or spiritual bread. It was meant to give some type of a sense of security in Hashem. When you understand that Hashem is always with you. If you understand that Hashem is always with you and that you're never alone, then you have trust in Hashem. That's the school of the man. So we are back to the question that I asked in the beginning, that when you gather all this bitachon, because you go to some lecture and you get all hyped up and you're very inspired and you're saying, I'm going to trust Hashem, but then this little voice is telling you, who promised you that it's all going to be okay? Didn't you hear Rabbi Anava said in his last lecture, worry? Now I can blame everything on me. So what do I say to myself? What do I answer to myself or to my voice who tells me, whoa, before you're going all ninja here, who's giving you the promise that it's actually going to work? So I'll tell you quickly a story, maybe you heard it, maybe you didn't, about Reb Zusha, who lived literally on the fumes of bitachon. He wasn't a businessman, didn't have a job, he would learn Torah, he was dependent on the kindness of other people. And there's a story that one time there was a certain individual who did something not so nice to Reb Zusha, and he felt very uncomfortable what to do. I hurt the tzaddik. I don't know. They didn't know what to do. He went to his father, and the father says, you know what? Why don't you make Reb Zusha like a nice, good breakfast with eggs and some fish and nice bread, and you'll appease him with a nice breakfast. Okay. What happened was that was the situation. He finished eating, and the young man comes with this beautiful breakfast and puts it on his table. Comes out the shamash, the servant of Reb Zusha, and he couldn't believe what's going on. He was upset, he was angry, he was confused. When he was asked what's going on, he says, listen, Reb Zusha has this weird habit that when he finishes praying and when he finishes eating, he just sits on the table and he says, Abba, ani raev. Father, I'm hungry. And then I come out with the breakfast that I made for him and I put it on the table. He never thinks or remembers that I'm the one who's chopping the cucumbers and cutting the bread and everything. He thinks it's coming from Hashem. So today I decided to teach him a lesson. And I said, you know what? Tomorrow I'm not making him breakfast. And when he's going to say, Father, I'm hungry, nothing will come to the table. I didn't buy any ingredients. I didn't go to the market. I didn't prepare anything. I'm going to teach him that it's not Abba that's giving him the food, that it's me that's cutting the tomatoes and preparing the meal. And lo and behold, you walk in with a breakfast. Now Rab Zusha knows that the food is coming from Abba, from Father. This is midat habitachon. That even though that you know that bederech hateva, by nature, what Reb Zusha didn't know, that the shamash, the servant, is the one who's preparing the breakfast. He said, Abba ani re'ev, Father in heavens, I'm hungry. Of course he knew the servant is cutting the salad and preparing everything, or the eggs or whatever it is. But that's really the midat habitachon, that you know that according to nature, it happens. But you say, I know that Hashem is the one who's going to decide how it's going to happen according to nature. This is the attribute of bitachon, that I'm not by myself, that I don't have to run after my livelihood. I have to do my hishtadlut. I have to do my effort. I have to put out some work. But whether it's going to come from here or from here, that's already depending to Hashem. As they say, we are the hands and feet. Okay? You have to walk to work. You have to do something. We are the hands and feet. But the master of the universe is the one who opens the tap. How much, by who, and when. That's it. It's a partnership here. Very simple. That's to simplify what's midat habitachon. Okay. Up until now, what we said, very nice, very good approach. But we have to now look into another approach that might throw us off. And we have to bring it up so chas v'shalom nobody will have doubts. Some say that emunah, having trust and belief in Hashem, is to be calm because everything that is supposed to happen will happen. Right? And you cannot cause Hashem to do anything. Just sit back, relax, whatever is going to happen is going to happen. Okay, right? And let me add on that you can't do anything to add or to change what Hashem is going to do. Where it's incorrect, or forget about right now incorrect, is if this is the case, then don't stop praying. Right? Because if you need to sit back and relax and nothing and everything will happen as it's supposed to happen, and you can't change anything, so why are you praying? Stop praying. I'll give you a note now. You can be dismissed from praying. So, in the book Chovat HaLevavot, the duty of the hearts, the duties of the heart, he tells a story there. There's a story with Rabbi Akiva that was traveling and he went into a city and was knocking on the doors and asking for a place to stay. So there's a few versions of the stories. One of the versions says that nobody wanted to host him because it was around the time of the Mered Bar Kochva and they didn't trust him and they didn't want to listen to him or whatever. It's irrelevant right now. The story is, what's important for us to know, that nobody hosted him. So what did he do? He had to go out of the city and he went to the forest. And he had a candle to learn Torah. He had a rooster to waking up in the morning, and he had a donkey to carry his stuff. Okay. As he camps out in the forest, wind comes, blows off the candle. Okay, now he can't learn Torah. A lion comes and eats the chicken, the donkey, chicken. The bottom line is that he's left without a donkey, without a chicken, and without a candle. What is the approach of Rabbi Akiva? Kol man derachman avid letav avid. Everything that Hashem does, He does for the good. Everything is good. Lo and behold, the next day he wakes up in the morning, on the news, bandits, robbers came into the city, raped, killed, robbed, and did a lot of problems and ran away. And he's like, look at that. If they would see me in the forest by the candle, for sure they would come and rob me and kill me and ever. and if they would hear the rooster or hear the donkey, so he understood how he was saved. Right? I'm sure you heard the story already. I'm not the one who's breaking the news. Great story. In Chovav Levavot, the duties of the hearts, he says something interesting. Bitachon, trust in Hashem and security in Hashem, is that I should accept the will of Hashem no matter what. Right? Loss of business, death of a loved one, horrible divorce, how you get kicked out of your house, how you call it, eviction, whatever. Whatever happens to you, I just need to accept it, and that's it. And why? Because only Hashem knows what's good for me. So if we're going by the story of Rabbi Akiva, was that the will of Hashem and that was good for Rabbi Akiva? If that's the approach? And if this is the case, how come King David says that if I trust Hashem, then kindness will surround me? When you just said that bitachon is that I have to accept whatever happens, doesn't matter what, because Hashem knows what's good for me. So how would you interpret the story with Rabbi Akiva? That Hashem knows what's good for Rabbi Akiva and he should just accept it, which because makes perfect sense. He accepted the wind blowing the candle, he accepted the death of the donkey and the chicken, and later on understood that Hashem did what's good for him. Right? That's one way of the approach. But maybe it's the other way around, and Be'etzem Rabbi Akiva trusted in Hashem when he was kicked out of the city and camped in the forest, and the trust caused the kindness to surround him and blow out the candle and kill the chicken and everything, and he was saved. So which one is it? Interesting question. Now, if David HaMelech says that if I trust Hashem that I surround myself with kindness, so how do I surround myself with kindness? How do I add kindness? Hashem, when He created the world, He made all the rules. One fundamental rule that He did, I'm sure you know of it, it's called midah keneged midah. Measure for measure. Right? You're familiar with the term. Saying, in other words, that Hashem is walking with me. David HaMelech says, in Book of Tehillim, chapter 121, Kuf Kaf Aleph, verse 5, Hashem tzilcha al yad yaminecha. Translation, the Lord is your shadow by your right hand. The Baal Shem Tov explains that verse and says, whatever you do, like a shadow, Hashem is your shadow. Pretty simple. Saying in other words that it all starts with you. You really control your mazal. Now I don't want to translate the word mazal luck. Luck is when you go to Vegas, you need luck. Mazal is not luck. Even though the translation, if you put in Google the word mazal, it will come out as luck. But mazal is something completely different. I told you already, mazal is the shefa, is the abundance, the flow that comes from the world above to set your life. The acronym of mazal is makom, zman, limud, the place, the time, and your Torah. And you set your mazal. You are born with a certain mazal, and according to your behavior, mazal comes from the word in Aramaic, mazaliyahu. And I'm sure it sounds familiar to you. It's the same root in the word in Hebrew, nezilah, nazil, something that drips. Right? certain shefa, certain energy comes from the world above. It's called chayut, a life force. And how much you open the faucet, that's how much it will drip down. You are the ones who's controlling the mazal, how it would come to you. So the Baal Shem Tov says, you want to add more kindness? It starts with you. Hashem is the shadow. Hashem tzilcha al yad yaminecha. David HaMelech says that Hashem is the shadow. Saying another, you start. You start, or as Hashem would say, you lead, I'm after you. That's it. So I'll tell you quickly a story. There was a man who sat in a lecture, and the rabbi said that if you have real strong emunah and bitachon, trust and belief in Hashem, and you buy a lottery ticket, you'll win. Ooh! The guy was like, he goes out, buys a lottery ticket, didn't win. I said, okay, maybe this week didn't work well. The next week goes guy buys a lottery ticket, nothing. The following week buys a lottery ticket, nisht. He comes back to the rabbi and says, listen, your approach doesn't even work. 3 weeks, I didn't win nothing. So the rabbi tells him, listen, give me 1 second. Starts doing all sorts of meditations, Kabbalistic stuff. And he says, okay, I made all the tikkunim in the world above. Now I see that this week you're winning the $50 million prize. Guarantee. And I'm so confident that you're winning that I'm going to buy your ticket for half price. I'm going to give you now $25 million to show you how, how do you say, secure I am, how confident I am that you're going to win the 50 million. So the guy is like, okay, I'll sell you the ticket. And that's where the rabbi stopped and told him, that's why you didn't win. If you would have the bitachon that you would win the 50 million, you wouldn't sell it for 25. So you don't have the right bitachon in Hashem. You don't really trust and believe in Hashem. And that's why you didn't win the first 3 weeks. Now, whether it's a true story or not, it's irrelevant. It's not a true story. It's just for you to get the point that the rabbi told him, if you really believe that you're winning now the 50 million, you wouldn't sell it for 25. You just thought of making a quick transaction. You have to elevate yourself to such a place that you know that Hashem is the only one. The reason why most people don't have the right trust is that they don't live under the impression that Hashem is the one. That's the reality. When you elevate yourself to a very high level that you're confident, you are sure that Hashem is the only thing, then you have midat bitachon, and then you apply yourself accordingly. So I, not chas v'shalom disqualifying the approach of the chovat halevavot, but that's not the approach, that you just sit and accept what comes to you. That's not the approach of the Torah. Then it's not true that you can't change anything. That's why Hashem gave us prayers. People pray all day long for the health of somebody they love or the health of somebody they don't even know. And they pray for their parnasah to meet their other half. If that would not work, Hashem would not tell us to pray. Saying in other words, yes, you can change what's coming to you. How do you add the chesed? When we're asking David HaMelech, then very simple. You start. You start. Hashem will follow. Hashem says, I have your back. Yeah, you take the initiative. Let me conclude with another story that you'll see what I'm trying to say. 2 weeks ago, we read in the parasha that Moshe Rabbeinu killed the Egyptian. Remember? I hope you do. Moshe Rabbeinu kills the Egyptian. Then when he comes to Datan and Aviram, they right away tell him, whoa, if we don't listen to you, you're going to kill us like you killed the Egyptian? So the Moshe Rabbeinu got very startled. Whoa, they know? They know that I killed the Egyptian? If they know, I'm in trouble. Oh no. It says, Vayar Moshe, Moshe was afraid, Achen noda hadavar. The news was out. They told, how do you say? They snitched, they talked, they said. And if you're looking at the verse, it says, Vayar Moshe, Moshe was frightened, Achen noda hadavar, the news was out, and right away it says, Vayishma Paro. And Paro heard about the situation. Really what the Torah would have to say, Vayar Moshe, Hashem was afraid, Achen noda hadavar, the news was out, was revealed. That's what's missing. Datan and Aviram went and told Paro, Vayishma Paro, and then Paro heard. Right? That's what would make sense. Other than that, how would Paro heard? Vayishma Paro. This little missing part of the verse is coming to tell you that if Moshe had bitachon, then he would say, who cares about these two hoodlums? I care if they know, if they don't know. The bitachon itself, the security, is coming from the essence of the security. If Moshe Rabbeinu would say, who cares? Then Paro wouldn't hear about it. The fact that Moshe was scared and he said, oh my gosh, they said, then Paro heard about it. Saying in other words that the insecurity of Moshe Rabbeinu caused the news to go out and to Paro to hear about it, and now he's wanted. Saying in other words, if Moshe would completely ignore it, having trust in Hashem. Now why should he have trust in Hashem? Because he did the will of Hashem. He didn't kill the Egyptian for nothing. He did the will of Hashem. He protected his brother. So he did the right thing. Why should you worry? The Torah is telling you Moshe had a little bit of insecurity. Therefore, the fear became a reality. Vayishma Paro. Right away Paro heard about it. The Torah is not telling me that Datan and Aviram went and told him. Saying in other words that the insecurity, that's what was the trigger. Or saying in other words that the bitachon comes from the essence of the bitachon. The security that Hashem will surround you, will encompass you, as David HaMelech says, comes from the fact that you have bitachon. Since Moshe Rabbeinu, there was a doubt. He depended it on on nature. So he got measure for measure. That's the reality. There was a deficiency, a lack of bitachon, because he was afraid. And saying in other words, I'm not depending on above nature that Hashem will take care of it and nobody will know. He put it on nature that Datan and Aviram might, how do you say, squeal, squirrel, squeal, snitch. Since he depended it on nature, he got measure for measure. That's it. Simple it is. So when you question, how do I apply Midat HaBitachon? I want to have a full trust in Hashem to a point that I can actually change the will of Hashem. I'm not willing to sit and accept what comes. That is, as they say, plan B. Yes, I will accept everything that comes after I did my effort, after I applied bitachon, after I did actions to bring on me kindness and security. If then something happened not to my liking, I will still accept it, because Hashem knows what's good for me. That's the approach of the Chovat HaLevavot. After you applied Midat HaBitachon, not before. Don't just sit there and be like, okay, whatever Hashem does, I'll accept. No, that's after the fact. You have to apply midat habitachon. You want the kindness to compass you? Then just remember that you are the right hand, Hashem is the shadow. You have to live with the fact that Hashem has your back. That if you go beyond the letter of the law, like I told you, the two choices I told you in the beginning. A, that you go according to nature, and you're subject to nature. Or you go beyond nature and you lean on Hashem. So Hashem says, you trust me? I will make it work how it's good for you. I will not fail you. I will not disappoint you. I will make your desires happen. I will come through. You'll see how I step forward, and miracles will be beyond what you can imagine. I'll tell you a quick story and then I'll conclude. And I shared that story in length and in short. Now I'm going to have to do it in very, very short. But I told you already, and I will tell you that at the right time, in the right length. But I did talk about my personal story a few times, and it's recorded and it's online and you can find it. It's not so easy to find, it's hidden. But I told you that after I suffered my near-death experience, a year plus later, I was arrested by the FBI and thrown to jail with an indictment with 47 counts, looking at 40 years in jail. It was right after September 11, and I ended up sitting in jail for a year and a half, facing a federal indictment with 47 counts, that even if I wipe off half of it, I still get to sit in jail for 40 years. Somehow, miraculously, I was able to, after a year and a half, to get bail, because the first year and a half they didn't approve bail, because it was right after 9/11 and they connected it to terrorism. No bail. Somehow they approved bail. I got out of jail, started a whole journey of just one thing after the other, became worse and worse, and really in jail, it's when I started doing tshuva, by the way. Not the year before that. The year before that was just getting the hang of it. In jail is when I started to do tshuva. But when I came out of jail, that's when I met my rabbi. After a short encounter, started learning with him, felt safe enough a few weeks later, and I told him what's going on. And he told me, very simple, it's all a test from Hashem. It's just a test. If you fail the test, you'll sit in jail. If you pass the test, nothing will happen. You need to go and learn Torah all day long. You need to observe Shabbat, eat kosher, pray, guard your brit, do this, do that. It's all a test from Hashem. And if you trust Hashem, nothing will happen. For half a year, I was a Jew on steroids. Nothing in the history of Judaism like that. Sleeping for 2 hours, the rest of the day just immersed in Torah. Any possible thing that I can just put under my wing, I took. I told you, at the time I lived in New York, freezing cold winter of New York, I would go every night to the Lubavitcher Rebbe's grave in New York and read a whole book of Tehillim in the snow, outside, every night. Went to a freezing mikveh, prayed at 4 in the morning. I was on steroids. Of course, not real steroids. Learning Torah from morning to night. Holding Hashem like this. That was my only hope. And every day, maybe 100 times, that little voice would say, what if it's not going to work? What if all my effort is not going to work? Psst. You know who deserves all the credit? When I met my wife, the first date I told her about my near-death experience. The second date I told her that I'm facing 40 years in jail. And that rolled over to the third date too. I had an ankle on my leg because that was part of my bail. 3 times a day I had to report to come and sign physically. I had a very, very difficult bail. And I'm going on dates. You know who deserves all the credit? My wife. You know, she married me a month before my trial. Can you imagine the bitachon? What bitachon? She says, I'm with your rabbi. It's just a test. I trust you that you'll pass the test. We got married a month after my wedding. I had my trial. 127 people were arrested at the same time. Me being the top of the pyramid. 2 people from the 127 people came out of this like as if nothing happened. You know what I got? A year probation and $1,000 fine. That's what I got. Some of my friends are still in jail, by the way. This is going back 20 years ago. Some of them got 15 years, 20 years, 17 years. That's how I walked out of the courtroom. Nobody could believe what's going on there. And my lawyer tells me, don't be so happy and so excited. The immigration is probably waiting outside to arrest you. Never came the immigration. Never. And the story goes on and on and on. I told him, I'm giving you the extreme short version of the story. But why? Because when you have 100% bitachon in Hashem, that you are not 99%, 99.9, 100%, you are locked on the target, Hashem says, I run the world. Not the judge, not the FBI, not the district attorney. I run the show. I'll show you what I can do. What never been done. And I walk out of it, and you have to hear the whole story. Nothing. That's bitachon in Hashem. That's what my rabbi told me. You have to have 100% trust. But you need to initiate. You need to do something. I'm joking when I said on steroids, but I was so determined. This was like not a sword here. This is a sword and a gun. It's this or you spending the rest of life in jail. You choose what you want to do. You do a certain act, Hashem will follow if you really believe He can do it. And He can. I'm sitting here. You have the power to change your life. You have the power to change your destiny. You have the power to change everything. Because there's an owner to the world. There's a balabait. Somebody owns the world. Not a government, not any agency, not a minister, not a king, nobody. There's only one owner to the world. And He runs the show. And if you give Him the keys, He can make anything happen.